Science Beetle.
So let's continue the discussion here. Let's go ahead and move some stuff over. So let's move all of this over here to the side. And so let's kind of talk about that. So let's represent that decimal. I'm going to put that decimal here. And so we've got the decimals over here. I'm just going to go ahead and write them in like this. And I'm going to say here, without having to write everything out, I'm just going to say these are all decimals. And they all have their different spaces. But to the right, there's a grouping order to the numbers. And so let's kind of represent those again here. So those numbers can be represented the following. So we had said that there were 3 positions here. And we had said, if I'm going to write them in here again, we had said that the first one was the ones, the second one was the tens, and the third one was the hundreds. Now, the idea is that all of these 3, these are the base place value units, and these 3 are going to be grouped together. And they can essentially be grouped together like so. So when we group them like this, these actually represent what we call as a larger place value grouping. And we can call these the ones. Because essentially we can actually count up to 100 separate ones. The next grouping over is going to be the thousands. Because remember, once we get a copy of 9 of the hundreds, then at that point we have to go to the next level. The next level up here is going to be called the thousands. And each one of these essentially is going to have the a similar division that we've got here with the ones, the tens, and the hundreds here at 3 specific positions here. And each of those are essentially going to be the 1,000s position, the 10,000s position, and the 100,000s position. So what I'm going to go ahead and do here is I'm just going to put these 3 here, and I'm going to use the first letter of each of these ones positions. So I'm going to use the first letter here, O. I'm going to place an O here to represent the ones. And I'm going to take the second letter here, the T, represented there for the tens. And I'm going to take the third letter here, the first letter H, and I'm going to represent it here to represent the hundreds. And this pattern, HTO, is going to be repeated as you continue to go to the left of that decimal. So the next grouping here that we've got is going to be one more grouping. This one here is known as the millions. And then the last one here at the very end, and notice here we're going to have the 3 letters as well. We're going to have the H, the T, and the O. And in the last one, we're going to have the billions. And so running out of space, but I'll put it here at the very end. And this one here represents the billions. And it's going to have its HTO at the bottom as well. Okay. And so what does that mean specifically for us? Well, if we're trying to figure out the place value, as the number grows from the decimal and it gets getting bigger and bigger, this value, this digit that we're looking at, we need to make sure that we can keep track of these individual components at each major level of ones, tens, millions, and billions. And there's actually more categories as you go to the far right. And that at that point, because the number is getting too big, we start getting into a discussion about how we use, what systems do we use to count very big numbers and what system we use to count very small numbers. That's a discussion for the scientific method. So if you want to check that video out, I'll go ahead and link it here so that you can see. But for right now, this is place value. And the same type of pattern that we see here for the breakdown as we move to the left, we also see a very similar pattern over here in the decimals. But remember, we do have to add the THS for some of these numbers here to designate that this number is actually lower than 1. Okay, and so it's a very small number overall. And so one last thing I'll say about this is that every time that we move from one spot to the next, so we go from here to the ones, and then when we go from the ones to the tens to the hundreds, etc., what we're doing here, we're making a jump because we have already increased by a factor of 10. In the next video, I'm going to go ahead and explain that a little bit further just so that you can understand what that really means visually. So if you haven't already done so, subscribe, keep watching, keep learning, and we'll see you in the next video.